bad. You see, the first sign that a man is falling in love is not always loud. It is not the extravagant gestures, bad, nor the perfectly crafted words whispered in romantic moments. Instead, it is often quiet, subtle, a shift in the way he moves through the world. His focus, bad, which for so long may have been rooted in himself, in his routines, his goals, and his independence, begins to shift outward, bad. He starts to consider another person, you, not as an addition to his life, but as a part of his life, bad. This movement from self-centeredness to shared-centeredness is one of the clearest indications of a man entering the realm of love. A man's default state, bad, especially in his early years or when he has been unattached for some time, is often orbiting around his own axis. He has his priorities. His career, his fitness, bad, his hobbies. He is building his world according to his own design, and he may guard that independence fiercely. But when love starts to take root, bad, you will notice a reorientation. Suddenly, his decisions are no longer just about what serves him best. They begin to account for how they might affect you, bad. It might be small things at first. He thinks twice before booking a weekend away with friends because he considers how much he wants to spend that time with you, bad. Or perhaps he alters his routine slightly so that he can call you during the day, not out of obligation, but because his thoughts naturally drift to you, bad. This shift is not to be mistaken for dependency. It is not about a man abandoning himself or giving up his individuality, bad. True love is never about losing the self, but about expanding it. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke of the I, thou relationship, bad, in which two people meet as whole beings and yet transcend their individual boundaries in connection. When a man begins to love, bad, his sense of stretches to include you in his world, not as property, not as an accessory, but as an integral part of his journey, bad. It is in this movement from me to wit that you will feel the difference. His language shifts subtly, bad. I'm thinking about moving to a new apartment becomes we could look at new places together someday. I want to travel to Italy turns into wouldn't it be incredible if we saw Tuscany together? This isn't manipulation, bad. It's an uncalculated organic evolution in his thought process. You are becoming part of the mental landscape where he maps out his future. But pay close attention, bad. This shift is not always accompanied by declarations. Men, especially those raised in environments where vulnerability was not encouraged, bad, may not articulate this change with words. Instead, you will see it in action. He asks for your opinion on decisions he would have once made alone, bad. He considers your comfort, your preferences, even in matters that don't directly involve you. He invests in understanding not just what you like, but why you like it, bad. Not just how you feel, but what shapes those feelings. This is because love for a man is not only about intense emotion, it is about responsibility, bad. When his heart begins to open, he feels a deep, almost primal urge to care for and protect what he values, bad. And so he begins to act as if your happiness and your well-being are no longer separate from his own. He wants to know that you are safe, that you are supported, bad, that you feel seen. This is not control. It is not ownership. It is love in its raw and unpolished form. Now, I must emphasize this shift is not instantaneous, bad. Love is not a switch flipped in the heart. It is more like a slow sunrise, light spilling across the landscape inch by inch. At first, he may resist it, bad. He may sense that his priorities are changing and feel conflicted. Independence, after all, is something many men are taught to cling to as a badge of honor, bad. But as he surrenders to love, you'll see the resistance melt. He no longer fights the pull, he allows himself to flow with it. And yet, bad, there is a danger here for you too. You might mistake his attentiveness as a fleeting phase, or worse, as a performance designed to win your affection. But true love is consistent. If his focus only lasts during the chase and fades once he feels secure, then it was not love, but infatuation. Bad. Real love is proven not in intensity, but in continuity. So observe carefully, not with suspicion, but with clarity. Bad. Does his attention expand, even when there's nothing to gain? Does he factor you into his world, not because he must, but because he wants to? When a man truly loves, bad, your existence in his life is not a negotiation, it is a given. And this is where the beauty lies. When his focus shifts from himself to you, bad, it does not mean he loses sight of his goals. Instead, he begins to dream bigger, not just for himself, but for both of you, bad. It is in this space that love transforms from a feeling into a foundation, something that can carry both of you forward. Remember this, bad. Love is not about how much someone says you matter. It is about how effortlessly they make space for you in their lives, their thoughts, their future, bad. When a man begins to love, you will not need to fight for his attention. You will feel the shift, not as noise, but as a steady, unspoken truth. And so, bad. I leave you with this: pay attention to where a man's focus lies, for where his focus goes, his heart inevitably follows. Bad. There is something fascinating about the way a man's attention evolves when he begins to fall in love. At first, it may look like infatuation, a surge of desire, bad. The rush of hormones, the thrill of chasing what feels new and exciting. But as the dust settles and the novelty fades, something deeper starts to emerge. Bad. If you pay close attention, you'll notice a quiet but profound transition. His interest moves from lust to genuine curiosity. And this is a crucial moment. Bad, for it is here that love begins to take root. Lust is easy. It's instinctual, biological, and in many ways superficial. It is a fire that burns hot, but often lacks depth. It draws him toward you in a physical sense, but it does not yet demand that he sees you, not truly. In lust, bad, he is captivated by the surface, the way you look, the way you move, the way your presence excites him. But curiosity is different. It is not about consuming, bad. It is about exploring. It is not driven by appetite, but by a desire for understanding. When a man moves into this stage, you will see his questions change. Bad. They are no longer just about what you like or dislike or what you're doing this weekend. Instead, he begins to peel back the layers. Bad. He wants to know where you came from, what shaped you, what makes you laugh, and what keeps you awake at night. He starts listening, not merely to respond, bad, but to absorb. He's no longer content with knowing about you. He wants to know into you, to step into your world and see through your eyes, bad. This shift happens because curiosity is the language of the heart. It is the mind's way of reaching for connection, bad. When he asks about your childhood memories or the dreams you held when you were younger, he is not making conversation, he is building a bridge. He is saying, bad, show me who you are beneath the surface. Let me understand the rhythm of your soul. And this is where love begins to separate itself from mere attraction, bad, because curiosity requires humility. It demands that a man set aside his assumptions, his pride, and his tendency to project his own ideas onto you, bad. It is an acknowledgement that you are not simply a character in his story, but the author of your own, and he wants to read that story without rewriting it, bad. But let's be clear, this move into curiosity is not always comfortable for him. Men are often conditioned to pursue conquest, to focus on outcomes, bad. To slow down and explore the inner world of another person requires a different kind of strength. It requires presence. It requires stillness, bad. And it requires a willingness to admit that he doesn't have you all figured out and that he never fully will, bad. This is why curiosity is such a reliable signal of love. It shows that he sees you as more than an object of desire or a source of validation. Bad, he sees you as a mystery worth exploring, not for the sake of control, but for the sake of connection. And in doing so, he invites you to open up, to reveal the tender, bad, hidden parts of yourself that you may have protected for years. But here is the caution I must offer: not every question is rooted in true curiosity. Bad, some men ask questions as a tactic, to gain leverage, to impress you with their attentiveness, or to extract information they can use later. Bad. True curiosity feels different. It feels patient. It feels safe. It carries no agenda other than to understand. When a man is truly curious, you will sense no rush, bad, no pressure, no judgment. Instead, you will feel his presence as an open space where you can simply exist as you are. And as you sense this shift, bad, notice how it changes you. When someone looks at you not as a collection of attributes, but as a whole human being, it awakens something within, bad. You may feel yourself wanting to share more, to trust more, to step into a level of intimacy you've never experienced before, bad. This is the power of curiosity. It invites authenticity. For the man, this stage is transformative. As he learns more about you, your struggles, your joys, bad, your contradictions, he begins to see you as an equal, as a partner, as someone whose inner world is just as rich and complex as his own, bad. This realization breaks down the walls of ego and opens the door to true emotional connection. And yet the beauty of curiosity is that it never really ends, bad. Even decades into a relationship, the men who love most deeply are those who continue to ask questions. They do not assume they know everything about their partner, bad. They remain students of the person they love, because to love is not to arrive at a destination, but to walk a path of discovery together. So, bad, watch carefully for this move. Does his interest extend beyond the surface? Is he seeking to know you, not just have you? Because when a man's curiosity awakens, bad, it signals the birth of a love that is deeper, quieter, and far more enduring than desire alone could ever offer. And remember this: lust may ignite the fire, bad, But only curiosity keeps it alive. The man who is genuinely curious about your soul is the man who, perhaps without even realizing it, is already falling in love. Bad. As love deepens, there comes a moment where words and intentions alone are no longer enough. A man can speak of his feelings, bad, and he can express his fascination with you, but love, real love, does not exist in theory. It exists in action, bad. And one of the clearest markers that a man is falling in love is his consistency. He begins to show up not because you ask him to, not because he feels obligated, bad, but because something within him compels him to be present in your life over and over again. In the early stages of attraction, there is often excitement, bad, a spark that drives him to reach out, to make plans, to pursue. But that initial energy can be deceptive because it is fueled by novelty, bad. It is easy to be attentive when everything feels fresh and effortless. The real test of his feelings comes later, in the quiet moments, bad, when the thrill of the chase subsides. If his presence remains steady even when there is no immediate reward, no need to impress, bad. This is not mere infatuation, it is love beginning to anchor itself. Consistency is not always glamorous. It doesn't look like fireworks or grand romantic gestures, bad. It's far more subtle than that. It is in the good morning messages that arrive even on his busiest days. It is in the way he checks in on how your week is going, bad. Not to fill a silence, but because he genuinely cares. It is in the small acts, showing up when you need support, remembering details you shared weeks ago, bad. Making time for you even when life demands his attention elsewhere. Why does this matter? Because love, unlike infatuation, is not a sprint, bad. It's a long and steady journey. It is easy to show up when it is convenient, but when a man begins to love, he chooses to show up even when it requires effort, bad. And this choice is not driven by external pressure. It comes from within, from a place of emotional investment that is no longer conditional on circumstances or moods, bad. It's important to understand that this consistency does not mean perfection. He may still falter, he is human. But the difference lies in his intention, bad. When a man loves, he doesn't disappear when things become challenging. He doesn't leave you guessing where you stand. He stays, not because he must, bad, but because his heart won't allow him to do otherwise. This stage is often where many women feel a sense of relief because for the first time, bad, there is no need to wonder, will he call? Does he care? Is he still interested? His presence answers those questions without words. And yet, bad, I want to caution you, do not confuse activity with consistency. A man might flood you with attention in the beginning only to withdraw when the excitement wears off. True consistency is measured not in intensity but in duration. It is steady, grounded, and reliable. When a man is consistent, he creates a sense of emotional safety. Bad. This safety is the soil in which intimacy grows. You begin to trust that he means what he says. Bad. That his affection is not a mask he wears temporarily, but an authentic reflection of his heart. And in that trust, your own walls begin to soften. Bad. You find yourself opening up more, sharing more, because you sense that his presence is not fleeting. This stage also transforms the man himself, bad. As he continues to show up for you, he begins to feel the weight of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a privilege. Love awakens in him a desire to nurture, bad, to protect, to contribute to your well-being. In this way, consistency is not merely a behavior. It is an expression of his evolving character, bad. But let's not romanticize this entirely. Consistency requires effort. For a man to maintain it, he must confront parts of himself that resist commitment. His fears, bad, his past disappointments, his longing for freedom. And yet, when love takes hold, he discovers that showing up for you does not diminish him. It strengthens him, bad. In choosing reliability, he is not losing his independence. He is discovering a deeper form of strength, the ability to love without conditions. And so, bad, observe how he shows up. Does his care extend beyond moments of passion? Does he remain present even when there is no excitement to sustain him, bad? Does he make space for you in his life, not as a guest, but as someone who belongs? These are the questions that reveal the truth of his heart, bad, because love is not proven in what a man does once, it is proven in what he continues to do. Grand gestures may sweep you off your feet, bad, but it is consistency that keeps you standing together when life becomes difficult. So remember this, a man who truly loves you will not make you chase his presence, bad. He will give it freely, steadily, and without hesitation. And in that consistency, bad, you will find not only his love, but also the foundation upon which trust and intimacy can flourish, bad. There comes a moment in a man's journey into love when the walls he has so carefully built around his heart begin to crack. You see, bad, most men are taught from an early age to armor themselves, to appear strong, composed, untouchable. Vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness. Bad. And so they hide their fears, their insecurities, even their deepest dreams behind a mask of control. But love has a way of undoing this armor. Bad. When a man starts to truly fall, he doesn't just offer you his time or his attention. He begins to offer something far more sacred, his unguarded self. Bad. You'll notice it first in small moments. Perhaps he shares a story about his childhood, something that left a mark on him, something he doesn't talk about easily. Bad. Or maybe you see it in the way his voice softens when he admits to his uncertainties about the future. Bad. These glimpses into his inner world are not casual, they are significant. For a man, showing vulnerability is not natural. Bad. It is learned in the presence of someone he trusts deeply. But here's the paradox: as he opens up and shows his tender side, you will also notice another shift. Alongside his vulnerability emerges a quiet protectiveness. It is not the kind of protection born out of ego or control. Bad. It is not about claiming you as his or guarding you as if you are fragile. Instead, bad. It is a desire to safeguard the space you share, to ensure your emotional and physical well-being because your pain now feels intertwined with his own. Bad. This dual movement, becoming vulnerable while also becoming protective, reveals a profound truth about love. Bad. To love deeply is to expose one's heart to the possibility of hurt, and yet, bad. It is precisely this openness that makes him care so fiercely for your happiness and security. You see, vulnerability and protectiveness are two sides of the same coin. Bad. When a man lets you see the parts of him he normally hides, the fears he carries, the weight of his mistakes, bad. The dreams he holds close, he is trusting that you will hold his heart gently. And in return, he feels an instinctive pull to hold your heart with the same care. Bad. Love transforms his instinct to protect from something primal into something intentional. It is important to recognize the stage for what it is. Bad. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is courage. It takes immense strength for a man to let someone into his private world. Bad. To admit that he doesn't have all the answers, to allow you to see him not as a flawless provider or hero, but as a whole human being, with light and shadow, strength and fragility. But there is a delicate balance here. Some men confuse protectiveness with control. Bad. True protectiveness is not about limiting your freedom or imposing his will on you. It is about creating a space where you feel safe to be yourself, safe to grow. Bad. To make mistakes, to express your emotions without fear of judgment. Bad. This is when you can distinguish between a man who is falling in love and one who is simply driven by possessiveness. Love protects, but it never confines. Bad. As he becomes more vulnerable with you, you may also notice his protectiveness extending to your shared relationship. Bad. He begins to guard the bond you are building, not out of paranoia, but out of respect for its value. Bad. He doesn't allow outside distractions or conflicts to erode the trust between you. He invests time and effort into nurturing the connection. Bad. Ensuring it remains strong even as life throws its inevitable challenges your way. This stage is a test for both of you. For the man, bad. It means stepping out of his comfort zone, daring to show emotions he may have been taught to suppress. For you, bad. It means holding space for his vulnerability without judgment and allowing his protectiveness without mistaking it for control. Bad. The dance between these two energies, his openness and his care, forms the foundation of deep emotional intimacy, and yet not every man reaches this stage. Bad. Some are too afraid to let down their guard. Bad. Others equate love with dominance and never learn to balance their protective instincts with respect for their partner's autonomy. This is why it is so important to observe, bad, to listen, not just to his words, but to how he behaves when he feels exposed and how he acts when you are in need of support. When a man begins to love, bad, he can no longer stand apart from your pain. He feels it as his own. He celebrates your joy as if it were his own victory. And in these moments, bad, he discovers that true strength is not in hiding emotion or wielding control, but in allowing himself to feel deeply and to care fiercely. So watch for this, bad. Does he let you see him not just the polished exterior, but the raw, unfiltered self? And does he simultaneously rise to create a safe, bad, nurturing space for you to show your own vulnerability? Because love is not proven in the absence of fear or fragility. Bad. It is proven in the willingness to share them and to protect one another as you both step into that vulnerable space. And remember this, bad. A man's greatest strength is not in how well he shields himself from the world, but in how bravely he opens his heart to you, and in how gently he holds yours in return. Bad. There is a subtle yet profound shift that happens when a man is truly falling in love. It is a movement that cannot be faked, bad, because it requires him to step outside of the small, protected world of his ego. In the early stages of connection, bad. A man may still be operating from a place where pride takes priority, where being right, being admired, or being in control feels essential, bad. But as his feelings deepen, you will notice something extraordinary. He begins to place your happiness above his ego, bad. This does not mean he sacrifices integrity or abandons his sense of self. It does not mean he becomes passive or subservient. Rather, bad. It signifies that his love for you has become stronger than his need to win. In moments of conflict or misunderstanding, bad, which is bad. Instead of retreating behind defensiveness, he starts to listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart. He is no longer looking for an argument to defeat, bad. He is seeking a solution that brings you both back into harmony. It is here that love matures, because the ego loves to protect itself. It thrives on being right, bad, on being in control, on avoiding vulnerability. But love demands something higher. It asks a man to risk the discomfort of admitting when he is wrong, bad. To face the sting of apology, to soften in moments where pride would rather harden, bad. And when a man does this, not as a tactic to appease you, but as a sincere offering, it is a sign that his heart has fully engaged, bad. You will notice this shift most clearly during disagreements. A man who has not yet reached this stage will often argue to defend his position, bad. His words may sound like listening, but beneath them is a subtle resistance, a need to preserve his pride. But a man who loves will pause, bad. He will step back and ask himself, is this worth holding on to? Or is our peace more important than my victory? In love, bad. He begins to see that resolving the conflict matters more than proving himself. But this shift is not limited to conflict alone, bad. You'll see it in the everyday choices he makes. Perhaps he puts aside his preferences to accommodate something that brings you joy, is bad. Perhaps he is willing to step out of his comfort zone because it knows the world to you. These may look like small sacrifices, bad. But they are the quiet language of love, yet is essential to understand what this does not mean, bad. A man placing your happiness above his ego does not mean he erases himself. True love is not about one person vanishing into the other, it is about balance, bad. He honors his own needs and values, but he no longer sees them in opposition to yours. Instead, he sees your happiness and his as interconnected. And in this process, bad, he grows. Because setting aside the ego is never easy. It requires self-awareness, humility, and emotional courage. For many men, which is bad, it is one of the hardest lessons to learn. The ego whispers that to yield is to be weak, that to bend is to lose power. But love reveals a deeper truth, bad, that real strength lies in the ability to soften without breaking, to give without losing, to love without conditions, bad. This is where transformation happens, not just in the relationship, but in the man himself. As he prioritizes your happiness, he discovers that his own joy expands, bad. Love begins to teach him that harmony is not achieved through dominance, but through alignment, through meeting each other as equals. And here, bad, something beautiful unfolds: reciprocity. When a man lays down his pride for the sake of love, it invites you to do the same, bad. It creates a space where neither of you needs to fight for power because the relationship itself becomes the shared priority, bad. This is how trust is built, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet moments where both of you choose love over ego again and again. But beware of false signs, bad. Some men will seem to set aside their pride, but only as a tactic to manipulate or to maintain control in a subtler way. True love asks for no conditions, bad. It does not give in order to get. You will know the difference by how it feels. Real humility creates peace, while false humility leaves you walking on eggshells. So, bad. Observe carefully. When a man prioritizes your happiness over his pride, does he do with an open heart or with resentment? Does he yield with dignity? Bad. Or does he later use it as ammunition? True love never keeps score. It doesn't measure how much was given or received, bad. It simply gives, because to love is to recognize that your joy is inseparable from his own, bad. And this is where the essence of love reveals itself, not in how fiercely a man can hold his ground, bad, which is, but in how gently he can let it go when it no longer serves the bond you share. So remember this: a man's ego will always seek to protect itself, bad. But a man in love will protect the connection above all else. And in those quiet moments when he chooses harmony over pride, bad, you are witnessing one of the clearest signs of his heart awakening to you.